It was an unusually quiet evening in San Francisco when Elon Musk, arguably the busiest man in the world, decided to step away from the whirlwind of his ventures. The city's lights shimmered like scattered stars on a dark canvas, a reflection of the ambition and dreams that kept it alive. But Elon, in that moment, wasn't thinking about Mars or neural interfaces. He was pondering something far simpler: what it meant to be human. Wrapped in a casual hoodie and jeans, he blended into the crowd at the bustling train station. For once, he wasn't the center of attention. He watched commuters shuffle by, faces weary, conversations muted by the roar of arriving trains. It was an ordinary scene, yet something about it felt extraordinary to him. Elon leaned against a cold steel pillar, sipping a coffee that had long since turned lukewarm. He had chosen this moment of anonymity deliberately, craving a sense of normalcy. As he observed the ebb and flow of humanity, his eyes caught a small figure sitting alone on a bench near the platform's edge. A girl, no older than 10, clutched a battered notebook to her chest. Her gaze darted nervously between the trains and the shadows, as if searching for something, or someone. Her untied shoelaces and rumpled coat suggested she had been running or wandering for hours. Elon frowned. Something about her struck a chord. He took a step closer, hesitating. Was it his place to intervene? But then the girl looked up, her wide brown eyes meeting his. They were filled with a mixture of fear, determination, and an unmistakable plea for help. "Hi there," Elon said softly, crouching to her level. "Are you okay? Are you waiting for someone?" The girl clutched her notebook tighter and nodded, then shook her head. I don't know," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the station's clamor. "Do you need help?" Elon asked, his tone gentle but insistent. She hesitated, then slowly extended the notebook toward him. Its cover was worn, the edges frayed. Elon opened it cautiously, his curiosity piqued. Inside, he found pages filled with sketches, complex diagrams of machinery, equations, and notes scribbled in a neat hand. It was impressive, even for someone much older. "Who made these?" he asked, glancing back at her. "My brother," she replied. He's gone. I need to find him." Elon's heart sank. He didn't know the full story yet, but he could see the desperation in her eyes. This wasn't just a case of a child waiting for a late sibling. Something much deeper was at play. "All right," he said, his voice steady. "Let's figure this out together." The station hummed with life. But as Elon knelt beside Sophie, the noise faded into the background. Her small hands trembled as she adjusted the strap of her fraying backpack. Elon noticed it was patched in several places, as though it had been repaired many times instead of being replaced, a stark contrast to his world of luxury and endless resources. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice steady and calm. "Sophie," she whispered, barely audible. "Sophie," he repeated with a reassuring smile. "I'm Elon. Can you tell me what happened to your brother?" Her lips quivered. "He went away. He said he'd come back. But it's been a long time. I think something happened to him. Do you know where he might have gone?" Elon asked gently. Sophie hesitated, then nodded toward the notebook in his hand. "He was working on something important. He told me to keep this safe." Elon flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing. The diagrams were intricate, some resembling early sketches for advanced robotics, others hinting at renewable energy systems. It wasn't the work of a casual hobbyist. Whoever had created these was deeply skilled and innovative. "How old is your brother?" Elon asked, curiosity building. 16, Sophie replied. "He's really smart, smarter than anyone I know. But he said some people didn't want him to finish his work." Elon's instincts sharpened. The notebook hinted at ideas well beyond the scope of most teenagers. If someone had seen the potential in this work, it wasn't hard to imagine why they might want to control or suppress it. "Where's your family?" Elon asked. Sophie's face fell, and her voice broke. "It's just me and him." The weight of her words hung in the air. Elon felt a pang of sorrow. He had expected an ordinary day, a brief foray into the world of everyday life, but now he was standing on the precipice of something much larger. "Okay, Sophie," Elon said, standing, "let's figure this out together. But first, let's get you somewhere safe." Elon led Sophie to a quiet cafe across the street. He ordered hot chocolate for her and a tea for himself, hoping the warm drink would help soothe her frayed nerves. Sophie sat silently, her eyes fixed on the notebook resting on the table between them. Do you have any idea where your brother might have gone? Elon asked, trying to piece together the puzzle. Sophie shook her head. He didn't tell me. He just said if anything happened, I should find someone who could help, someone who could understand his work. Elon felt the weight of her words. He glanced again at the notebook, recognizing the brilliance behind its pages. It wasn't just the technical skill, it was the vision. The designs hinted at scalable solutions to some of humanity's greatest challenges. From energy sustainability to environmental restoration. Why did he think something might happen to him? Elon pressed. Sophie hesitated, her small fingers wrapping around her mug. He said he made something dangerous. Something powerful. Elon's mind raced. A teenage inventor working on something powerful and potentially dangerous? If her brother's work had drawn the wrong kind of attention, it could explain his disappearance. Do you trust me, Sophie? He asked. She looked at him, her wide brown eyes studying his face. After a moment, she nodded. Good, Elon said. Then here's what we're going to do. We'll start by looking at what's in this notebook. If we can figure out what your brother was working on, we might find clues about where he went. And if there's danger, I'll make sure you're safe. Deal? Sophie nodded again, a flicker of hope crossing her face for the first time. Back in his temporary apartment, Elon spread the notebook's pages across the coffee table, examining each diagram with precision. Sophie sat beside him, nervously tapping her fingers on the armrest. One page caught his attention. It featured a map of what appeared to be a rural area, marked with coordinates and a series of notations. In the margins, there were cryptic phrases like, off the grid, and hidden potential. This could be something, Elon muttered. He pulled out his laptop and entered the coordinates. The location was a remote area in Northern California, far from any major cities. Do you recognize this place? He asked Sophie. She leaned over the table and squinted at the map. It looks like where we used to go camping, before everything happened. Elon's heart sank. The more he learned about Sophie's life, the clearer it became how much she had lost. But the map gave them a direction. And Elon wasn't one to back down from a challenge. We'll go there tomorrow, he said, making a mental note to arrange transportation. But for now, you need to get some rest. The next morning, Elon and Sophie set out for Northern California. Elon had rented a sturdy SUV, anticipating rough terrain. As they drove, Sophie opened up about her brother. His name's Alex, she said softly. He was always building things, ever since we were little. He said he wanted to fix the world. Elon glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Fix the world, huh? Sounds like a good goal. Sophie nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. He said the world was broken, but it didn't have to stay that way. Elon felt a pang of familiarity. Alex's words echoed his own philosophy, an unyielding belief in the potential for innovation to create a better future. As they neared the coordinates, the landscape grew increasingly rugged. Towering redwoods lined the road, and the air felt crisp and clean. Finally, they arrived at a small clearing marked by an old wooden sign. It bore the name of a long-abandoned campsite. This is it, Sophie said, her voice tinged with both excitement and fear. Elon parked the SUV and stepped out. Scanning the area, it was eerily quiet, the kind of stillness that made his instincts sharpen. Stay close, he told Sophie. Together, they ventured into the forest, following a narrow dirt path. As they walked, Sophie pointed to a small cabin in the distance. That's where he'd go to work, she said. Elon quickened his pace, his curiosity building. But as they approached the cabin, they noticed something unsettling. The door was ajar, and the inside appeared ransacked. Elon pushed the cabin door open slowly, the rusty hinges creaking in protest. The interior was dimly lit by rays of sunlight filtering through cracks in the wooden walls. Papers were scattered across the floor, along with fragments of broken glass and overturned furniture. Stay close, Sophie, he said softly, instinctively positioning himself between her and the mess. Sophie hesitated in the doorway, clutching her backpack tightly. Her eyes darted around the room, filled with a mixture of fear and hope. This was his place, she whispered. He worked here for months. Elon crouched down, picking up a piece of paper from the floor. It was a blueprint, partially torn but still legible. The diagram depicted a sleek, cylindrical device, annotated with notes about energy transfer and sustainability. This looks advanced, Elon muttered. Too advanced for most people to understand. He moved toward the desk in the corner of the room. Despite the disarray, it seemed to be the focal point of the cabin. On its surface lay a laptop. Its screen cracked but still intact. And a notebook similar to the one Sophie had brought. Elon flipped through the notebook, scanning for clues. Sophie walked over cautiously. Her eyes fell on a photo tucked beneath the laptop. She picked it up and held it tightly. It was a picture of her and Alex, taken during happier times. He wouldn't just leave this behind, she said, her voice trembling. Something happened. Elon placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We'll figure it out, Sophie, I promise. As Elon examined the laptop, he noticed a faint light blinking near the bottom edge. Despite its damaged state, the device wasn't completely dead. He pressed the power button, and to his surprise, the screen flickered to life, revealing a password prompt. Do you know the password? He asked Sophie. She shook her head. He didn't tell me, but she reached into her backpack and pulled out her brother's notebook. Maybe it's in here? Elon skimmed through the pages again, searching for anything that could serve as a clue. His eyes landed on a phrase written in bold at the bottom of one page. Ad astra per aspera. To the stars through hardship. Elon translated aloud. That's familiar. He typed the phrase into the laptop, and the screen unlocked, revealing a series of folders. Most were labeled with technical jargon, but one folder stood out. It was titled for Sophie. Let's see what's in here, Elon said, clicking on the folder. Inside were a few videos and a document titled README. Elon opened the document first. It was a letter addressed to Sophie. Sophie, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't keep my promise to come back. I'm sorry. I didn't want to leave you. But there are people who would stop at nothing to take what I've created. What I was working on could change the world. But it's dangerous in the wrong hands. If I'm not there, you need to find someone you can trust. Someone who can finish what I started. Trust your instincts. You're braver than you know. Elon felt a lump in his throat as he read the words. He glanced at Sophie, who was staring at the screen with tears in her eyes. He didn't just leave me, she said, her voice barely a whisper. He tried to protect me. Elon reached out and gently squeezed her hand. He trusted you to carry this forward. And now, I'll help you. Elon clicked on one of the video files. The screen filled with Alex's face, his expression both determined and weary. Sophie, Alex said in the recording. I'm recording this in case I don't make it back. The device I've been working on, it's called the Helios engine. It's a renewable energy source that could power entire cities with almost no environmental cost. But some people don't want that. He paused, glancing nervously off camera. There's a group, they've been following me. They know what the Helios engine can do. And they want it for themselves. I had to hide it. I couldn't risk them finding it. If you're watching this, you need to find the coordinates I left in the notebook. Take them to someone who can help. Someone who believes in a better future. The video ended abruptly, leaving both Elon and Sophie in stunned silence. He was scared, Sophie said, her voice shaking. He didn't want to leave me. Elon stood, his mind racing. If what he's saying is true, we're dealing with something much bigger than we thought. What do we do now? Sophie asked, looking up at him with wide, fearful eyes. We follow the trail, Elon said firmly, but we'll need to be careful. If someone's after this Helios engine, they won't want us finding it. Using the coordinates Alex had referenced, Elon pinpointed another location deep in the forest. It was several miles from the cabin, accessible only by foot. As they prepared to leave, Elon noticed a faint buzzing sound outside. He moved to the window and saw a black SUV parked at the edge of the clearing. We've got company, he said quietly, his tone grave. Sophie's eyes widened. Is it them? Stay close, Elon instructed, grabbing a flashlight and shoving the notebooks into his backpack. We're leaving. Now. They slipped out the back door, moving swiftly into the forest. The sound of footsteps and voices grew louder behind them. They can't be far, a man shouted. Spread out. Elon led Sophie through the dense trees, his mind racing. Whoever these people were, they were organized and determined. He couldn't afford to let them catch up. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a small clearing. In the center was a metal hatch embedded in the ground, partially concealed by overgrown grass. Elon knelt down and examined it. A faint engraving near the edge read Project Helios. "This is it," he said. Sophie looked over his shoulder. "Do you think it's safe?" "It's our best shot," Elon replied. "Let's find out." He pulled the hatch open, revealing a ladder that led into darkness. One by one, they climbed down, unaware of what awaited them below. The ladder creaked as Elon descended, the cool air from below carrying a metallic tang. Sophie followed closely, her breathing shallow. The darkness seemed to press in around them until Elon's feet touched solid ground. He clicked on his flashlight, revealing a narrow corridor lined with wires and pipes. "This isn't just a hiding spot," Elon murmured. "It's a facility." Sophie reached the bottom and clung to his arm, her eyes wide. "Did Alex build all this?" "Not alone," Elon replied, studying the layout. "This kind of setup requires resources. Either he had help, or someone else built it. And he found a way to use it." They moved cautiously through the corridor, their footsteps echoing. The walls were lined with old, faded blueprints and diagrams, many featuring annotations in Alex's handwriting. As they continued, the corridor opened into a larger chamber, dimly lit by flickering emergency lights. In the center of the room stood a machine unlike anything Elon had ever seen. The machine was sleek and cylindrical, just as the diagrams in Alex's notebook had shown. Its surface shimmered faintly, as though it were alive. Thick cables snaked from its base, connecting to a nearby console. "This must be the Helios engine," Elon said, approaching it with awe. Alex wasn't exaggerating. "This looks revolutionary." Sophie stayed close, her eyes fixed on the machine. "Do you think it works?" Elon examined the console, his fingers brushing across the keys. The screen flickered to life, displaying a series of diagnostic reports. "It's operational," he said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Fully functional. This thing could power an entire city." Before he could say more, a sharp clang echoed through the chamber. Both of them froze. Sophie clutched his arm. "They're here," she whispered. The sound of heavy boots filled the corridor they had just come through. Elon scanned the room, his mind racing, spotting a small side door. He grabbed Sophie's hand and led her toward it. "This way," he whispered urgently. They slipped through the door just as the main chamber flooded with light. From their hiding spot, they heard voices. "Secure the engine," one of the men barked. "Make sure no one else gets near it." Peering through a crack in the door, Elon saw a group of armed individuals inspecting the Helios engine. One of them, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, seemed to be in charge. "Boss will want this intact," the scarred man said. "No mistakes." Elon pulled back, his heart pounding. "They're here for the engine," he whispered to Sophie. "We need to find a way to stop them." Elon and Sophie crept further into the hidden facility, following a network of side corridors. Along the way, they discovered more clues about Alex's work. Shelves lined the walls, filled with journals, tools, and prototypes. It was clear that Alex had poured his heart into this project. Sophie picked up a small device resembling a wristband. "What's this?" she asked. Elon examined it closely. "It looks like a control device," he said. "Maybe it interfaces with the Helios engine." As they explored, a new idea began to form in Elon's mind. "If we can activate the engine remotely, we might be able to stop them," he said, "but we'll need to get back to the console." "Isn't that where they are?" Sophie asked, her voice filled with worry. "Yes," Elon admitted, "but we don't have a choice." Elon devised a plan. While he distracted the intruders, Sophie would use the wristband to access the engine's control system. It was risky, but it was their only shot at protecting Alex's work. "Sophie, you're brave, and you're smart," Elon said, kneeling to her level. "I know you can do this." She nodded, her expression determined. "I'll do it, for Alex." Elon smiled and ruffled her hair. "Let's go." Elon stepped into the main chamber, drawing the attention of the intruders. "Hey," he called out, raising his hands. "Looking for me?" The scarred man turned, his eyes narrowing. "Who are you?" "Just someone who doesn't like bullies," Elon replied, his tone calm but defiant. The intruders spread out, their weapons trained on him. Meanwhile, Sophie slipped through the shadows, making her way to the console. "You don't know what you're dealing with," the scarred man said. "Step away, and maybe I'll let you leave in one piece." "I think I'll pass," Elon said, keeping their attention focused on him. "That machine doesn't belong to you." As he spoke, Sophie reached the console and activated the wristband. The Helios engine began to hum, its surface glowing brighter. "What's happening?" one of the intruders shouted. The scarred man turned toward the engine. "Stop her." Elon lunged forward, grabbing a heavy wrench from a nearby table. He swung it at the nearest intruder, creating chaos. Sophie pressed more buttons on the console, her small fingers moving quickly. The Helios engine roared to life, emitting a brilliant light that filled the chamber. The intruders shielded their eyes, shouting in confusion. The scarred man yelled, "Shut it down." Sophie turned to Elon. "It's working. Keep going." Elon shouted back. The engine emitted a pulse of energy, knocking the intruders off their feet. The scarred man glared at Elon, his expression filled with rage. "This isn't over," he snarled before retreating with his men. As the dust settled, the engine powered down, leaving the room in silence. Elon and Sophie stood side by side, their expressions a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "We did it," Sophie said, her voice trembling with emotion. Elon placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it. Alex would be proud." In the days that followed, Elon used his resources to secure the Helios engine and ensure it would be used for the betterment of humanity. He also arranged for Sophie to live in a safe, supportive environment, promising to stay in touch. As they said their goodbyes, Sophie hugged him tightly. "Thank you for everything." Elon smiled. "The world needs more people like you and Alex. Never stop believing in a better future." With the Helios engine now safe, Elon turned his attention to Sophie. The ordeal had taken a toll on her, but she remained resilient. They returned to his headquarters, where Elon called in trusted engineers and security experts to assess the situation. "First things first," Elon said, addressing his team. "This engine is the real deal, but it's also a target. We need to protect it and figure out how to implement it safely." The team got to work immediately, running diagnostics and analyzing the data Alex had left behind. Elon, meanwhile, focused on Sophie's well-being. He had arranged for her to stay in a secure guest suite within the facility, ensuring she had everything she needed. As she settled in, Sophie wandered into Elon's office. She looked around, taking in the shelves lined with books, the models of rockets and Tesla cars, and the large whiteboard covered in equations. "Do you think Alex would have wanted this?" she asked softly, her voice breaking the silence. Elon turned from his desk and met her gaze. "I think Alex wanted to make the world better. And that's exactly what we're going to do." Over the next few weeks, Elon involved Sophie in the work surrounding the Helios engine. He believed it was important for her to see the positive impact of her brother's legacy. She often sat in on meetings, watching engineers and scientists collaborate on refining Alex's design. One day, Sophie noticed a list of names on Elon's desk. "What's this?" she asked. Elon explained, "These are people who work in renewable energy, humanitarian efforts, and innovation. If we're going to make the Helios engine a reality, we need allies who share Alex's vision." Sophie studied the list, her brow furrowing. "Do you think they'll help?" "I do," Elon said with confidence. "People want to make a difference. They just need the right tools and leadership. That's where we come in." Together, they began reaching out to individuals and organizations, building a network of support for the Helios engine. The response was overwhelming. Scientists, philanthropists, and environmentalists from around the world expressed their eagerness to be part of the initiative. Despite the progress, Elon knew the danger wasn't over. The scarred man and his organization were still out there, likely regrouping and planning their next move. To ensure the Helios engine remained safe, Elon enlisted the help of a private security firm and contacted law enforcement agencies. One evening, Sophie approached him with a worried expression. "Do you think they'll come back?" Elon knelt beside her, meeting her eyes. "If they try, we'll be ready. But we're not just going to wait for them. We're going to find out who they are and stop them." Using the data recovered from the facility's security systems, Elon's team identified the organization behind the scarred man. They were a shadowy group with ties to fossil fuel companies, determined to suppress technologies that threatened their profits. "We're not just fighting for the Helios engine," Elon said during a meeting. "We're fighting for the future of clean energy and innovation." Sophie continued to grow more involved in the project. Though she was still young, her insight into Alex's work proved invaluable. She spent hours in the lab with engineers, explaining her brother's notes and helping them understand his thought process. One day, as she watched the team conduct a test, she turned to Elon. "Do you think I can be like Alex someday?" Elon smiled. "You already are. You're brave, curious, and determined. Those are the traits that change the world." Sophie beamed at his words, her confidence growing. Inspired by her brother's work, she began taking an interest in engineering, asking questions and sketching her own ideas. As the Helios engine project gained momentum, Elon decided it was time to go public. He organized a press conference to unveil the technology and share Alex's story with the world. Standing on stage with Sophie by his side, Elon addressed the audience. "This is not just about a machine, it's about a vision for a better future. A future where energy is clean, sustainable, and accessible to everyone." And this vision began with a young inventor named Alex, who dared to dream big. Sophie held up Alex's notebook, her voice steady despite the cameras flashing. "My brother wanted to help people, and now we can make his dream come true." The announcement made headlines worldwide. Governments, corporations, and individuals pledged their support for the initiative, eager to be part of the change. While the world celebrated the Helios engine, the scarred man and his organization were not done. Late one night, Elon received a message. "We know where you are. Stop, or there will be consequences." Elon tightened security around his facilities and doubled down on efforts to expose the group. With the help of law enforcement and cybersecurity experts, his team uncovered evidence linking the organization to illegal activities. But the scarred man wasn't finished. He orchestrated a break-in at one of Elon's labs, attempting to steal components of the Helios engine. This time, however, they were prepared. Security intercepted the intruders, and the scarred man was arrested. With the immediate danger behind them, Sophie began to find peace. She continued to work alongside Elon's team, her confidence and skills growing every day. Elon, seeing her potential, arranged for her to receive the best education possible. "You're going to do incredible things, Sophie," Elon said one day as they walked through the lab. "Your story is just beginning." Sophie smiled, her eyes filled with determination. "I want to make Alex proud." "You already have," Elon replied. The Helios engine became a cornerstone of global efforts to combat climate change. Its implementation transformed communities, providing clean energy to millions and reducing reliance on fossil fuels. Sophie, inspired by her journey, founded an organization dedicated to supporting young inventors like her brother. She named it Project Helios in his honor, ensuring his legacy would inspire future generations. Elon, reflecting on the journey, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. In helping Sophie and Alex, he had rediscovered a part of himself, a connection to humanity that transcended his ventures. Years later, Sophie stood on a stage, now a young woman, addressing a room full of aspiring innovators. Beside her was a model of the Helios engine, a symbol of her brother's dream. "My brother taught me that one idea can change the world," she said, "and with the right people by your side, anything is possible." In the audience, Elon watched proudly, knowing that Alex's vision and Sophie's courage had ignited a movement that would shape the future.